Hi, and welcome. This is the Feed Your Soul podcast. I am Melinda. Our goal around here is to dig in deep to the Word of God so that we can better understand ourselves, have a little bit deeper insight into our Creator, and connect more effectively with the world we live in. So, this series is on helpful Hebrew. It'll be where we dive into the Hebrew root words behind some of the English we're so familiar with. The idea is to slow down as we read the word and dive into the language. Um, and to do that, we need to have a little knowledge about the language behind our English versions, right? Um, so that's where the Hebrew comes in. I will admit right up front, I am not a language scholar. I'm not a biblical language expert. I'm someone who spent the last 10 to 12 years teaching myself and my kids to read Hebrew. And also, although none of us are fluent, um, we've gotten a pretty good grasp on a wide range of Hebrew vocabulary. And I just want to help as we go through the Torah portions. Um, we'll have corresponding Hebrew videos that should help you look into some of the Hebrew in each Torah portion. So this week's is in the beginning, Bereshit. And I'm realizing my camera is still on. I haven't been on camera in the last several videos. So hello, if I'm meeting you for the first time. Um, this is my bedroom. This is where I do my videos right now, God willing. I'll have a studio or an office space at some point where I can. I also use this video space to meet with clients, my nutritional holistic practice. We meet over Zoom. But in the near future, I hope to have a space where it's not my bedroom, but you get a peek into where I sleep with these lovely walls. This color blue, I just love it. It's so soothing to me. Um, so I am going to jump off of the camera though, so that you can see the whole slide. Okay. Bereshit, in the beginning, helpful Hebrew, Genesis 1:1 to 6:8. We're just going to jump right in. There's actually a lot in this video. I want to say maybe 14, maybe more actually, words. And all of these won't have this many. But I could have kept going. There is so much in the first few chapters of Genesis to really dive in and look more deeply into the language. But I had to cut it off at some point. Subsequent chapters probably won't have quite as many. Before we get into the first word, I just wanted to give you a visual of the Hebrew alphabet or alephet. If you're just listening to the audio version of this, what's up on the screen is just the Hebrew alphabet from Aleph to Tav. Remember that Hebrew is read from right to left. So it starts over here on the right with the letter Aleph and ends all the way down here with the letter Tav. I probably will do a video about the alphabet all on its own. So that'll be a standalone video, and we can go into the letter sounds and that each has a numerical value. And then there are vowel pointings, which are on the bottom of this slide. So look for that in the near future. The first word we're going to go over this week is God. And I started it off with a complex word, one that is even a little bit debated, but it comes up right here in Genesis 1:1. So we need to start in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's in Genesis 1:1. The word God there, the Hebrew behind that is Elohim. Elohim means something like majesty, magistrate, divine ones, judge. It can even be used for messengers like angels. Sometimes it's used in reference to gods of the nations. So, like, not the one true God, but God's little g. But the complexity and the debate part of this word really comes in the ending. The ending of this Hebrew word is im, which denotes plurality in Hebrew. It's just ot and im are the two ways, the masculine and feminine way to make a word plural. And so the idea is that this is a plurality, this word. It is used with singular verbs, though. So the hot debate is, why is Elohim plural? And does it mean something about God's character? I subscribe to the simplest reasoning, and it's a word that comes with weight. Majesty is kind of like a royal we would say in English. It gives presence and weight and meaning and authority to the word by it being plural. So remember, it most often comes with a singular verb when it's talking about God. So I don't think we have to read much more deeply into it than that. But this word does pop up in other places where it's not talking about our one true God. So you have to read in context to get the meaning. So this word God, Elohim, is used in Genesis 1:1 all throughout the chapter. And it's the only way God is referred to, or God refers to himself, is with Elohim, until we get over to chapter 2, where we see the word Lord come in. And it says Lord God in the English. Lord is in all capitals, is how you'll see it noted in your English Bibles. It's behind that word in Hebrew are these 4 Hebrew letters: Yod, He, Vav, He. Lord is the way that the English translators try to give weight and respect to this sacred name of our God. One of the issues is it may be hard to come up with the true pronunciation of what these Hebrew letters mean, because Hebrew was not originally written with vowel pointings, with the vowel markings, which is what these dots and dashes are. So that's a hot debate as well. I've read some books on the subject, and I have come to the conclusion that Yehovah is the closest we know. There is some vowel pointings in 1 or 2 places in some ancient manuscripts that point to this pronunciation, but it's a debate, and some people will say Yahweh. So this is not to say which of those is right. Maybe it's something entirely different. I'll look forward to being corrected when Jesus returns. But in the meantime, let's look at the meaning of this word, which that's the verse that I added at the bottom. This is not the first place this name of God is used in the Bible in Exodus. It shows up really early on in Genesis 2, but here's where God introduces what this name means. So God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Exodus 3:14. So Moses was nervous about going to see the people, going to really confront Pharaoh, going to convince the people of Israel that Moses was the one sent by God to lead them out. So he was nervous. So he asked God to tell me who to tell them sent me. Like, he basically was like, well, what's your name? And this is how God responded. And I find it so amazingly perfect. I've had some in-depth conversations with my kids about this, with others in different Bible studies. I find this to be amazing. Any other name, any other words would have put God in some kind of a box, right? Because that's what names are. Names kind of categorize things, right? We give names to objects to help us know what they are or what they do. We give names to people, and that's who they are. Names come with meanings. I am has the most broad meaning that I can think of, at least in English. And I think that holds true to the Hebrew behind this. So I am who I am. It means I exist, existing one. I am. There's no other way to describe it, because any other description would be a limitation. Um, and there aren't limitations on God. Any limitations that are put on him, he limits himself to enter into our space so that we can interact with him, like, without dying. So anytime I note God or Elohim or Yehovah, I'll put a picture here that's trying to convey what we're talking about, but I'll never put a picture of God, or there aren't any. No one has seen the face of God, and I do take seriously that we shouldn't be making any graven images. So God presents himself different ways in the word, and one of the ways was at the burning bush with Moses. He was in the flames. So that's where this picture on the screen comes from. The next word we want to talk about is light, or or. Again, I have learned Hebrew mostly through reading, through very little pronunciation practice. So if I get these pronunciations horribly wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. If you are a better Hebrew pronunciator, I would love to learn from you. This is a word that comes up in Genesis 1:3, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. We wanted to highlight this word because there is another use of the word light, which we'll see in a moment. But this is right there, the first thing that's created. Let there be light. What is the light? It's not, there's another word for like a luminary, a lamp. So it's not that. It's not a light source, but it's light as in the light that exists. And it's most often in the Bible used poetically in Isaiah and Psalms and the book of Job, really talking about bringing light into darkness in a poetic sense. Also daylight, and God being the light to Israel. So if we just want to think for a moment and just kind of imagine what God may have created here. I know there is slightly newish research, maybe the last 20 years, this has been identified that there is an actual light that is created at conception when the sperm and the egg unite. They think it's zinc that puts off light, and it's a really cool thing to see. So light is created at conception. Life and light are so connected. And when God said, "Let there be light," I believe he created all the pieces necessary to create all of matter. So this was a chemical explosion, maybe is a good word. And we're not going to get into that in this video, but when we want to reconcile the Bible against what the scientific community talks about the beginning of the earth, I don't think they are not incompatible. So God said, "Let matter exist," and it did. Conversely, since we're talking about light, let's talk about the word darkness in Hebrew. Choshek is, I think, how you would pronounce it. The Hebrew letter here, chet, is a guttural sound, and English doesn't have a good guttural sound. We don't have a letter for that. So some English speakers have a hard time. It's the same letter in the beginning of Hanukkah, comes up in a lot of words. So it's that guttural, almost, yeah, there's the sound. So Choshek is darkness. And this darkness, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And that's Genesis 1:2. This was literal darkness, like night, but it also comes up in the Bible as figurative, like obscurity, being in the dark, like being unknown, or a negative connotation. So this can be both literal and figurative. Light, this is the second use of the word light in the Bible. And it's a different Hebrew word. So in English, we just have in the beginning, God created light. And then several verses down, we have God saying, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years. Genesis 1:14. So this is ma'or, or marot. If it's for the plural of the word, you'll see marot. And that means like luminaries, objects that emit light. So although our English says let there be light and then let there be lights, there are two different Hebrew words. Another word that shows up repeatedly in Genesis 1 is the word good, or tov. And God saw the light, that it was good, or tov, and God divided the light from the darkness. Genesis 1:4. So all throughout the creation narrative, God calls what he created good. Here he calls the light good, not specifically the darkness. The darkness was there, and then he created light, and it was good, as it should be, fullness, as it was created to be. That's the really best meaning I can find of the Hebrew word tov, as it should be. And so this brings us to a phrase that actually will get its own special video, because we're doing a series called Women and the Bible. And this is the definition of Eve's role. And it comes from Genesis 2:18. Then the Lord, or Yehovah, then Yehovah Elohim said, it is not tov that Adam should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. In Genesis 2:18. The word helper, or fit for him, is ezer kenegdo. That phrase is kind of another hotly debated phrase. Ezer, the beginning of this phrase here, comes from, it is a word that is used many times in the Bible, actually, as a help, but it's a saving, rescuing kind of a help. It's used many times, the majority of the times in relationship to God saving Israel. A few times it's used in a military sense. So God being the ezer and strength, the help and strength of Israel. It comes up several times in the Psalms. And then the rest of this, kenegdo, comes from, it's a phrase that means corresponding to, or fit for, or parallel to, or even in front of. And my favorite book on the subject is a book on many verses about women called The Bible versus Biblical Womanhood by Philip Payne. And it really takes a lot of these key phrases and looks at the Hebrew behind them. And so he came up with this translation, a saving strength corresponding to him. And that's who Eve is. That's who she was created to be, not someone underneath, below Adam. In fact, this phrase could mean someone in front of him, almost like she's his saving strength. She is what he isn't. Just as a perfectly complemented partner for him. And really the Hebrew idea of man and woman, and what went on there, and in Genesis when God made woman, was that Adam was made in the image of God fully. And then, since Adam's needed company, a companion, a partner, he needed to be in relationship. God took who Adam was and split him in two. So Adam is the masculine um, reflection of God, and then Eve, Chaya, is the feminine reflection of God. And together, fully, man and woman are both the reflection of who God is. So it's really a beautiful definition of womanhood and conversely manhood, in relationship. And so I think God made it pretty clear what he intended for the partnership between men and women. And what changed that partnership was what happened at the fall. What we call the fall is when they disobeyed God and sin crept into their world. So there are more on that in its own video. I could talk about it a little longer, but I won't because we need to get to the next word. And it's another pair, Cain and Abel. These names show up in Genesis 4. Now Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. So these two names are significant as you're reading through Genesis 4. Cain is the word for Cain, which really Eve tells us here what it means. It means that she has gotten or possessed or acquired a man with the help of the Lord. Interesting, she left out Adam's part in that, but possession. And then Abel or Avel, that this letter here is it's a soft H sound. So it's Havel. And it actually means a little bit what it sounds like. It's breath or vapor. And if you know the story, Abel didn't stay around very long. These names seem to be more descriptions of these people rather than, just kind of names for the sake of having names. So it's interesting that Havel's name means breath or vapor. And it's the same word, if you're familiar, in the book of Ecclesiastes, where Solomon, it's kind of famous versus vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Solomon is lamenting that possessions or accomplishments are just fleeting, and he's kind of worried or pondering how he won't be remembered later on. And it's really the word vanity used there. It's this word, havel. It's breath, vapor. All is breath. All is but here for a moment. And so Abel was here for a moment. That brings us to the word sin. This is the first usage of the word sin in the word. It's in Genesis 4:7. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over to it. Genesis 4:7. So sin, the Hebrew word is chata. There's that chet again, the guttural sound. Chata. It's from the root word to miss the mark or miss the goal. So sin is missing that mark, being outside of the intended trajectory. It's, for me, words like this that are in the English, they seem very obscure, like not concrete. But then when we look at some of the Hebrew behind it, we can see that it's a very concrete meaning. When you say you miss the mark, you're not at the intended goal of what you should have been aiming for. So that brings us to the end of this first installment of Hebrew, Helpful Hebrew. And I hope you found it useful. There were probably 10 more words we could have put in from just these first few chapters of Genesis. There's a lot there when you stop and you slow down and you think through the meanings of what you're reading. So I hope you found this valuable. I want to ask, if you haven't already, will you like and subscribe to this, like this video, subscribe to this channel, comment, tell me your thoughts. The more interaction with these videos, the further they'll go. And actually, the more subscribers that I get to unlock certain things on YouTube, and I get more features and things like that. So it's really helpful when you subscribe and comment. The interactions help other people see these videos, and then share. If you found this valuable, share it with on your own social media and tell others. Okay, so I will see you next time. Look for the next Torah portion video, which will come out hopefully Friday, and I will see you then.